The year 1942. World War II is in full heat. The bloodiest battles in human history are fought. The Nazis are continuing to occupy Soviet territory, carrying out the total annihilation of the local population. Death, destruction and suffering of millions of people everywhere. And all of a sudden, from Berlin in early June, all German unit commanders receive a rather unusual guideline. It is demanded to urgently limit contact between soldiers and the female half of the civilian population of the USSR because of the threat of harm to the purity of the German race. On the one hand, war in all its bloody glory, as we can say, and on the other, such orders. Why did the Nazi command seriously concern itself with such a minor problem against the global objectives of conquest? Far from home. It is obvious that the vast majority of Nazi units were formed by young men under 40 who left their wives and children behind when they went to the front. Homesickness for home and women makes their presence felt. Many stubbornly harbored it, but more and more cases were recorded when the Nazis didn't want to live without women's attention anymore. Various activities were organized to satisfy their natural needs and wants. There were known cases when caravans of prostitutes who had all the relevant certificates and permits with them were brought directly to the headquarters. Such wandering brothels often accompanied the Nazis for months. However, not all military units enjoyed such privileges. The Nazi German command simply could not provide all of its troops with female companionship, so there was simply nowhere else to seek physical satisfaction except in the occupied territories. The starving Nazis, in spite of the strictest orders, often escaped at night to the controlled settlements. But the beautiful tales of an unhappy Soviet girl who suddenly fell in love with a similarly unhappy, unwilling Nazi German guy who came to kill on foreign soil, which modern filmmakers so much love to portray, were very few. In reality, more than 90% were rapes, accompanied by brutal beatings and often ending in the murder of those girls. It should not be forgotten that the picture was as follows. The Nazis considered the Slavic people second-class people, something in between man and an animal. Therefore, love was not expected there, only the satisfaction of physiological needs. However, sometimes this promiscuity led to unwanted results. Some women became pregnant and gave birth. It was difficult to conceal such a fact, so random fathers were immediately summoned to their superiors. Local commanders, languishing themselves with similar symptoms, almost never seriously punished the guilty, only urged them to be more careful in the future. But women who gave birth had big issues afterwards. Humiliated and insulted. Despair at the humiliation received reached such a level that it pushed unhappy women to horrible acts. There is a well-known case where a villager who during the long occupation of her village had 2 children from an affair with the Nazis. On the day when the Red Army liberated the village from the Nazis, carried both babies to the road and pounded them to death with stones. And there were a lot of such cases. More often, of course, women tried to terminate the pregnancy immediately after the first signs of an unwanted fetus, but not everyone was able to do so. Medicine in the Soviet Union was not well developed everywhere, and in the occupied territories, it was generally difficult to find even a simple medical assistant. Nazis took everyone who was more or less competent in treatment for their needs, and those who refused were shot. So women had to go to whoever possible for this kind of help. But there were difficulties too. Many were afraid of being exposed to the public. Getting pregnant by a Nazi was the most disgraceful thing one could imagine, and most of the villagers would not even bother to look into the circumstances under which the pregnancy had taken place. Desperate women decided to terminate their pregnancies on their own. The results of such methods often ended disastrously. Not knowing many nuances, women caused irreparable damage to their own body by destroying the fetus, and they often died themselves. The little fascists. But not everyone decided to have an abortion. There were women who accepted their fate and despite everything gave birth. Of course, the fate of these children was unenviable. They were often teased, called little fascists, not taken to play in their companies by other guys. Later, when they grew up, this stigma of outcasts stayed with them always. It was very difficult for them to get into any prestigious university and afterwards to simply find a good job. The best solution for those who gave birth to Nazis at the end of the war was to change their place of residence. And many did so and then managed to hide the fact of shameful conception not only from the public but also from the child. There are known facts when mothers told the truth to their children many decades later. One such child learned of the secret of his birth from his mother when she was on her deathbed. Dying of cancer, his mother decided to reveal the truth to him. Probably his joy of life was ruined by this. The man grew up believing that his father was a partisan executed by the Nazis, but the reality turned out to be really harsh. Mother was left alone in Narva with a baby in her arms, my older brother. Milk was gone, my brother got sick, and a surgeon from the transport service kept hitting on her. He said, "I'll give her condensed milk and bread if you lay down with me." So she did it. But her brother died anyway. When she realized that she was pregnant, it was too late. And yes, there were cases where it was not the rape that took place. In other words, it was an exchange transaction. That is, women in exchange for their naked bodies received necessary products for themselves, their children, and relatives. For such women, public opinion was also formed in a very negative direction, no matter what. For Soviet society, there were no compensating circumstances in such questions. Only the shameful act itself was taken into account. And it was not uncommon for women to be snitched on immediately after the liberation of territories from occupation. It is a well-known fact that the highest command issued a directive requiring that all such children be removed as soon as possible and sent to special orphanages, where they even had their names changed. The directive worked. Most of the so-called little fascists went with new documents to their new places of residence. Their mothers were investigated almost en masse. The results were severe. Several thousand unfortunates received real sentences and were sent to settlements specially formed for them. For many women, this sentence was equivalent to the impossibility, even after its completion, to return to their homes. There, this person was already specifically defined as almost a traitor to the motherland. Everyone turned away from such person, even his relatives. Hard times have destroyed many human lives. Injustice was done to many people, morally and physically exhausted during the years of the terrible military conflict. And people became noticeably hardened, suspicious, and distrustful. The constant habit of daily fear for their lives and the lives of their relatives accustomed them to harshness, even cruelty to those who showed weakness. Without any doubt, in subsequent years, the population will gradually return to the usual state of harmony. Many will realize that they were unfair in the past in their initial judgments, but all of that will be much later. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like.